that we so often get told, and was certainly very apparent in my younger days, was that I'm not good enough to do these things. How could God use me? I'm not educated enough. I don't have the skills. And certainly I'm not spiritual enough. If you've got that kind of feeling, you're in good company. If we look back in the Old Testament, we see that there were many people who had similar sorts of thoughts. There was Moses, the wonderful leader who led the people of Israel through amazing situations and experiences. When God called him to go and lead these people, what did he say? Yes, Lord, I'm on fire for you and I'll go to it. No, he didn't say that. Who, me, Lord? I can't even speak. And so God said, okay, I'll give you someone else to help you. And Aaron can come alongside you and he can say the words that are on your lips that I give you. And there was Isaiah, the prophet, the loved prophet who we love to read and hear God speak even today to us. When God called him, he said, it's over. I'm doomed. I'm a sinful person. I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. I can't possibly be your spokesperson, God. But God helped him to see another perspective. And then there was the excuse of being too young that Jeremiah used. Who, me, God? I'm just a young person. How can I give your message to other people? When I was a young adult, I had the privilege of going with a bunch of other young people to Papua New Guinea. And there, very much to my surprise, I discovered that my stereotypical view of what a missionary was wrong. I thought that they were extremely holy and that they were very particularly gifted. And I discovered that they were just ordinary people who had the same sorts of doubts as me. They didn't come from any particular special kind of background that made them more particularly equipped than others. Some of them had been farmers. One of them was a market gardener. Some were mechanics. Others were accountants and office workers. But they were all people who dared to believe that God could use them, and He did. And that radically changed my understanding of myself and who God possibly could be calling me to be. If He could use these ordinary people, and even if He used those ordinary disciples, maybe He could use me, but perhaps not for anything too great, but maybe for something great. Did I dare to believe that God could use even me? Among our current tranzsen missionaries, we've got people who, when they were in New Zealand, worked as engineers, as school teachers, as nurses, a laboratory technician, an accountant. We've got 2 sheep and beef farmers, a doctor, a waste disposal specialist, a social worker, a physiotherapist, an office receptionist, and a pig farmer. Just ordinary blokes and blokesses like you and me who were available to God to be used in whatever way He chose. So who will go and tell these people? Ordinary people like you and me will go and tell these people. Ordinary people who are God's messengers, making the good news known. So what does it look like being sent to as one of God's messengers to carry the good news to another country? Well, pretty much like what it looks like to be one of God's messengers carrying the good news of Jesus right here in New Zealand. but with a few changes and challenges. Jesus actually gave us a good picture of what it might look like, and we read that in John chapter 20. Let me read you a verse or two. John 20 and 21. This was Jesus who had at this stage appeared to his disciples after he'd been raised from the dead. And he said to them, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." So I guess we need to ask the question, if that applies to us, what are the ways in which the Father sent Jesus? Because there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be sent in the same sort of way. What are some of the things that characterized the life and ministry of Jesus? I want you to call out some to me. What are some of those things that characterized the life and ministry of Jesus? Compassion. Anything else? Obedience. Someone else at the back? Teaching. Yep. Humility. Anything else? He did a lot of walking. He did a lot of walking. But in walking, it actually put him in contact with a lot of people. And I'm really impressed by that last song that we sang. Because in a sense, it talks about going into the homes of the broken. That's what Jesus would have done. He would have walked down the streets of Pukekohe and gone to the most broken homes. Jesus came in humility, yet he was uncompromising in what he did. He came with love, yet wasn't afraid to confront evil. He came to bring life in all its fullness. He was the sent one. And we are the sent ones, sent in the same way. As the Father has sent me, so I'm sending you. So I'm sending you in love, to have compassion for the world, to live your lives in humility, yet uncompromisingly for my gospel. Bringing life in all its fullness to those we come in contact with. We are the sent ones. You know, I don't imagine that the life of Jesus was a particularly comfortable life. I mean, he wasn't exactly the most loved person by some of the people he walked among. And eventually that led to him being crucified. Does that mean that if we are to follow Jesus, we may very well be called down a hard road that leads down to suffering and eventually maybe even to death? Yes, it does. It may mean that. In 1938, a young Canadian woman, a teacher by the name of Margaret Clarkson, wrote a hymn which has been called by many evangelical leaders the finest missionary hymn of the 20th century. Margaret left home at the age of 20 and began teaching in a school at a gold mining camp in the north of Canada, 700 kilometres from north of Toronto. Now that's in the middle of nowhere. She said, "In all, I spent 7 years in the north. I experienced loneliness of every kind, mental, cultural, and in particular spiritually. For in all those 7 years, I never found real Christian fellowship. Churches that were modern with born-again Christians were almost non-existent. One night as she was studying the Bible and meditating on the loneliness of her situation, she began to read John 20. And soon after that wrote her well-known missionary hymn, which she titled Life of Triumphant Praise. And we think, wow, life of triumphant praise, what a missionary song.